So I'm just going to give you some practical frugality tips. I think obviously I mean, it's a case by case basis. You're going to have to figure out what you can do to really cut your costs and to tighten up your spending. But this is what we do. We don't subscribe to cable TV or dish TV at all. So the only channels that we get coming through our house are just whatever comes over the air. So a handful of local channels and some of the bigger networks, and that's it. Vehicles, I already told you, drive a 1997 Honda Accord station wagon. We also have a minivan that has, I think it has 190,000 miles on it. We bought it a few years ago for $3,000, and we bought our Honda Accord for $900, like a few years ago. Just to clarify, we just bought a new van, a new Nissan NV van, and we paid quite a bit for it. But we felt like now was the time that we could afford something like that, based on where our businesses are at. Cell phone, we have one cell phone. It's a iPhone 4S, so very very old iPhone, and it's one cell phone between my wife and I because we don't want to have more than one because we feel like it's an unnecessary cost. So to bring our bill down and to not have that extra expense of having two cell phones, we have one. And we bought that cell phone used. I think it was for $100 from a relative when they were upgrading. Clothes, to be honest, the only new clothes we get are gifts at Christmas and birthday time from usually my parents or my wife's parents. Rarely ever buy new clothes. In fact, we were just at a thrift store last night looking through their clothes section. I bought a pair of slacks. My wife bought some shirts. I mean, was anybody going to know? I mean, ultimately, you buy a brand new shirt, you buy some brand new pants, you wear them once, and they look like they're used, right? And so why not just save 90% or more and buy those clothes lightly used at a thrift store? Entertainment, again, we're always trying to find cheap, frugal ways to entertain ourselves. We don't want to spend a ton of money doing expensive things, and so we look for a lot of free entertainment. We do take trips. In fact, my whole family and my wife and I, are going to take all the kids to Puerto Rico for 3 weeks. We made sure we got half the flights paid for by frequent flyer miles, and then the bulk majority of the activities that we're going to do when we get to Puerto Rico are free. And so even though every once in a while, especially now because we're experiencing lots of success in business, we want to take some trips, we want to travel, we're still trying to do it as cheap as possible. And then our house too. I mean, we really like our house. It's a nice little ranch style home, but there's lots of imperfections. There's lots of things that an average family that felt like they were doing pretty successful in business might splurge for. I mean, there's just things here and there that need to be repaired. The furniture is not like super nice, but it really doesn't matter. That stuff really doesn't matter to me. I'd rather put that money back into business or spend a little bit extra money to travel and spend time with my family than surround myself with nice things. And finally, video games. I know there's like an epidemic going on. I mean, grown men in their 30s and 40s are playing video games like 10, 20 hours a week. Just like absolutely mind-boggling. And I know the draw because I used to do that when I was in college. I used to play a ton of video games. And I know the graphics now are like incredibly better than they were back then. So I can see the pull. But I think the problem is that it's video games promise a sense of accomplishment, this false sense of accomplishment. Like you beat the game and you feel like you've accomplished something in life. And I think people just crave that feeling. But the feeling of actually really accomplishing something, like building a business or putting a course together or doing something tangible with your time, is way better because it's not a false sense of accomplishment. It's a true sense of accomplishment, which is lasting and which has an impact not just on you, but the people you surround yourself with. I want you to get inspired. And so instead of entertaining yourself, instead of distracting yourself with things that aren't going to benefit you in the long run, read books, watch inspirational videos and movies, listen to podcasts, do things to expand your mind, maybe even connect with a mentor who's lived the entrepreneurial lifestyle and can give you some wisdom. But it's really important to inspire yourself, to enrich yourself so that you can grow your business. So what's the difference? We're going to look at two hypothetical scenarios for your book selling business, and we're going to consider the outcomes. So what's the difference between living a life of delayed gratification and immediate gratification? So scenario number one, delayed gratification. Let's say in 1 year, and this is very hypothetical, and it would never work out this way, but I just wanted to show these very general principles and how they apply to business as far as being content is concerned. So let's say in the first year, you budget enough money to buy 1,000 books per week. So it's at $3 a book. That's $3,000. Now, my $3 a book estimate is a very liberal estimate for the cost of goods sold. And what I was calculating there is I was assuming you're going to pay about $1.50 to $2 for the book. I factor in the dollar finder's fee for your book sourcer. I factor in the 25-cent listing fee for your book lister. I factor in the other expenses associated with hiring a book sales manager. And then I just kind of estimated all the other expenses on top of that, boxes and tape and labels and inbound shipping and all that, and I added it in, and I came up with $3 per book. Now, I know that you can get that number lower than $3. Like, my goal is to get that number closer to $2, or maybe even less than $2. It's definitely possible. But just because, depending on your area and where you're going to be able to acquire books, if you're going to the thrift store and you're buying them off the shelf, and you're paying somebody to do the sourcing and the listing and the managing, you're probably going to spend around $3 per book, which is fine, because we've averaged $3 per book for a while, and we've made lots of good money. But we're just going to stop there. Okay, so $1,000 books per week, that's doable. I mean, we have book sources that do 200, 300, 400 books a week. So you just have a couple of those, and you'll be in business. If all those books were collected over the course of the year, you'd have an inventory of 52,000 books sourced for the whole year. So that'd be in your inventory. Again, just to put it in perspective, that's 4,334 books per month sourced. Now let's take a look at the sales. So let's estimate that we sell 10% of our total inventory every month. So we have 50,000 books in inventory after the first year, and then year number 2 we start selling those books. If we sold 10% of those books every month, that'd be 5,200 books. The estimated gross profit per month is $31,200. So what that $31,200 represents is if you sold each book on average for $14, Amazon took their fee of $5.11 for a standard book. I just estimated that up a little bit. And your cost of goods sold at $3, you're going to have $6 to $7 left over in profit per book. So it's $6 per book. That's $31,200 per month in profit. Now, you need to replace those books that you sold, because the idea is to build up an inventory and then just to replenish that inventory. So let's say you not only got to 52,000 books in your inventory, but you wanted to maintain that. Well, that's going to cost you another $15,600 to maintain, because you're going to need to buy 5,200 books to replace the 5,200 books that you sold. And at $3 a piece, that's how much the replacement cost would be. So just to kind of estimate, or just kind of give you a perspective of what the profitability would look like after replacement costs, it'd be $3,600 a week in net profit, $15,600 a month, $187,200 per year. And again, there's probably going to be a handful of other expenses that come up that might chip away at some of those numbers right there. That's why I put net profits, but again, they're estimated. They're not set in stone. And then also, depending on your criteria and the books that you have at your disposal, and obviously when you have books in inventory, some of them that are going to be there aren't going to ever sell. But I think a 10% sell-through rate, again, is very, very conservative. We are closer to 15%, and we'd like to get closer to 20% per month. And I don't know if that's possible, but we're going to work really hard to get that number closer to that, because we really want to sell through our inventory at a faster rate. But 10%, definitely doable. If you follow our criteria, you should be able to do that. So that's scenario number 1. So scenario number 2 is immediate gratification. So for the first year, instead of buying 1,000 books per week, you'd buy 500 books per week. Now the idea behind that is instead of spending $3,000 on new inventory, you're pulling half of that out of the business. You're gratifying yourself with $1,500 per week and only spending $1,500 per week on books. And I just want to kind of give you some perspective. If you did that for a whole year, the total books sourced in that whole year would be 26,500 books. So half the amount of books that you'd be able to source if you were to just roll all those profits back into the business. And that amounts to 2,208 books sourced per month. So let's look at estimated sales. At a 10% sell-through rate, you'd sell 2,650 books per month for a gross profit of $15,900. Now you need to replace those 2,650 books you sold at $3 a piece. So that's $7,950 in replacement costs. So here's the numbers. Your weekly net profits would be $1,835. Your monthly net profits $7,950, and your yearly profits $95,400. So again, it's significantly less, and we'll compare those two right now. as you can see, the difference between the two. Then you can see they're significantly less than each other. And these numbers are really big. I mean, you might be operating a smaller scale business. And so you can just take the same theory and you can just, figure out where maybe you're not aiming to get 52,000 books in inventory. That's a lot of books in inventory. Maybe too much for you, and that's fine. Just pay attention to the principles that are being shared here, because I think that's at the core of this. That's why this presentation is really important. We look at the inventory size difference. I mean, if the idea is to replenish, in a year you could be at 52,000 with delayed gratification, but only 26,500 with instant gratification. I think that's the biggest part of the puzzle here. I mean, you'll have the monthly income is obviously different. It's half, or a little less than half, but the inventory size is half, which means that the person who delayed their gratification is going to be able to pull the profits every single month out of a 52,000 size inventory, whereas the instant gratification person is only going to be able to pull out profits for a 26,500 book inventory size. And the income is way different, is way better. So you see, it'd be better to just, again, hyper-focus and maximize the success of your business by reinvesting all your profits back in, or as much as you possibly can, and then being satisfied with the windfall and the profitability of your business down the road.